describing the relationship between Omaima and Bill Nelson, the phrase, whirlwind romance, is a bit of an understatement. The beautiful Egyptian immigrant and the bold Texan drove to Phoenix only weeks after meeting over a game of pool in a Huntington Beach, California bar. It was obvious why Bill, at age 56, was drawn to Omaima, a model in her early 20s. Bill was the type of man who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. He drove a red Corvette, wore bright red cowboy boots, and sported a large gold belt buckle. He was larger than life, according to his friends. There were flaws in his character, though. When he was a pilot in the 1980s, he was caught with a DC-3 full of illegal marijuana. As a result of his actions, he spent a significant amount of time behind bars. As for a murky past, Omaima trumped Bill hands down. She came into the world in a deprived southern Egyptian village not far from the Sudanese border. She claims that her father was physically and sexually abusive to both her and her mother. Maybe it's even worse that she was female circumcised, genital mutilated, as a child, making all forms of sexual activity a source of excruciating pain for the rest of her life. Omaima's mother eventually left her violent husband. The family's financial situation worsened, and they were forced to relocate to a Cairo shantytown known as the City of the Dead, because of its location among the city's tombs. Here, at age 18, Omaima had her first sexual encounter with an American oil worker. Omaima's mother was adamant that she marry him, and Omaima, seeing marriage as her only chance at escape from her family's abject poverty, gave in. After getting hitched in Egypt, the couple moved back to Texas to be closer to his family. The marriage, as might have been expected, ended in divorce. Omaima was now in an unfamiliar country, with limited English proficiency and no available resources. She was a bit of a nomad, occasionally working as a nanny or housekeeper, and sometimes landing modeling gigs. On rare occasions, she would steal small items. However, a string of boyfriends appears to have been her primary source of stability. She would start seeing a man, immediately move in with him, spend all of his money, and then run off after he confronted her, or she grew tired of him. She threatened Robert Hansen with a shotgun and tied him to a chair before robbing him. After a while of bouncing around like this from man to man and city to city, she eventually found herself in Orange County, California, where she met Bill Nelson that autumn. He was showing off a stack of bills and bragging about the land he owned in Texas. The fact that he was still legally married to another woman was something he kept from Omaima. Although this did not prevent Bill from marrying Omaima. After the hasty ceremony, Bill drove the bride across the country to visit his family in Texas and Arkansas on their honeymoon. Their doubts about his new, extremely young wife were understandable given that she was younger than some of his own children. However, while out horseback riding at the family ranch, her mount threw her. She showed her strength by demanding aspirin and vodka, which they gladly provided. After moving back to California, the couple settled into Bill's Costa Mesa apartment. Bill called his daughter Margaret on the phone on Thanksgiving to talk to her. They were having a wonderful time, he gushed, and she should come over for dinner. Defiantly, Margaret said no. This would be their final exchange before her father passed away. 3 days later, on December 1st, Jose Esquivel was roused from sleep by the ferocious pounding on his door. When he looked outside, he noticed a red Corvette sitting there. Since he did not recognize the vehicle, he did not open the door. The stranger left after a while. Later that day, around 1 p.m., our red vet driving guest came back. In this case, Jose was the one who responded. Omaima, a woman he had dated briefly over a year ago, was waiting for him when he opened the door. Her face and hands were blooded, and she was sobbing. Omaima explained to him that she had killed her husband in self-defense after he had attacked and raped her. She continued by saying that she had already dismembered the body, but that she was in need of assistance in burying it. She promised Jose $75,000 and 2 motorcycles if he would help her dispose of the body. Jose kept his cool and told Omaima to meet him at her apartment while he arranged to rent a truck. Following her departure, he contacted the authorities. The cops uncovered Omaima in Bill's Corvette. There were garbage bags in the passenger seat next to her. Inside, the officer saw what appeared to be human organs, including what looked like lungs with black spots from smoking. Omaima's answers to questions were evasive and contradictory. She claimed that Bill had murdered the donor, and that he was in Florida on business at the time. The Nelsons' apartment was subject to a warrant search by law enforcement. Bill's home had a lot of boxes of computer parts inside, because he ran a business from there. Still, there were some suitcases hidden among the packing materials. Garbage bags were hidden inside the suitcases. Human remains were found inside the trash bags. The police also discovered a shattered lamp and a clothes iron covered in tissue paper and human hair. More and more gruesome evidence was uncovered as they dug deeper. The bedroom had a blood-stained mattress and broken bedposts. A human torso, skinned and gutted, hung from hangers in the bathroom, dripping blood like a side of beef. But the worst of it happened in the kitchen. 2 human hands floated in a pool of turkey meat and oil inside a deep fryer. Human hip bone fragments were discovered in the garbage alongside leftover turkey and cranberry sauce. The large round object was hidden in the back of the freezer behind the bags of frozen vegetables. Bill's brain was in there. It looked like it had been deep fried as well, and it was badly burnt. After returning to the police station, Omaima repeatedly shifted her story. She continued to pace and ramble on, at times behaving as though Bill was still alive, and at others claiming that a voice, like a demon, had compelled her to dismember her husband. For the second time, she claimed that she had only killed Bill out of self-defense after he had raped her. No signs of sexual abuse were discovered during a forensic examination at a local hospital. Also, the cuts on her face, hands, and breasts were not self-defense wounds, but rather consistent with injuries sustained while dismembering a body, as stated by the investigators. Meanwhile, the medical examiner pieced together Bill Nelson's remains. He had been castrated in addition to being beheaded, disemboweled, and dismembered. Multiple blows to the head, consistent with being struck by the lamp or iron, were ruled to be the cause of death. Bill's ankles showed signs of ligature, according to the medical examiner. Bill's severed limbs made it impossible to tell if his hands were tied as well, but the shattered bedposts at the scene suggested as much. The ME also remarked that the dismemberment of the body was particularly precise, suggesting that the perpetrator had practiced this method before. Still more unsettling was the fact that nearly 100 pounds of Bill's skeleton had vanished. The Nelsons' next-door neighbor called the police after hearing the sound of an ongoing garbage disposal from the Nelson residence beginning on Thanksgiving night. He claimed that the motor was straining and grinding to a halt. What Omaima revealed to the court-appointed psychologist, however, sent shock waves throughout the country. She said she had barbecued Bill's ribs and eaten them, exclaiming, "It's so sweet," and adding that nothing was sweeter than her husband's meat. She later changed her story and claims she was never a cannibal. She was psychotic and suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, according to the psychologist's assessment. The trial of Omaima Nelson, accused of murdering and dismembering her husband, took place in December 1992. The prosecution was given a plausible explanation for the evidence thanks to the testimony of Robert Hansen. They said that Bill was bound to the bedposts after being lured into a consensual bondage session by Omaima. Then, she allegedly made a demand for financial support or some other share of his fortune, according to the prosecution. Omaima beat Bill severely with an iron and a lamp before stabbing him with scissors and then dismembering his body because he refused to comply. Omaima claimed PTSD from an abusive upbringing, and she and Bill were married for 4 weeks before he started sexually and physically abusing her. She said that he had raped her repeatedly over the course of several days, while he held her captive in his apartment before he killed her. She claimed that she freed one arm from the restraints and struck him with the lamp before stabbing him with scissors to protect herself. She said she couldn't recall chopping him up into pieces. She also said that she was possessed by ancient Egyptian souls who communicated with her and used her body. These ghosts instructed her to murder her husband and then dismember him, telling her that he would not be able to move on to the next life if his body parts were scattered. A jury acquitted her of first-degree murder charges, after deliberating for 6 days in January 1993. However, she was found guilty of second-degree murder and the assault on Han's son, and given a sentence of 28 years to life in prison for both of those crimes. Along with other notorious criminals like Susan Atkins, until her death in 2009, Helen Golay, Nancy Garrido, Louise Turpin, and Dorothea Puente. She is currently serving her sentence at the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, until her death in 2011. Behind bars, she started dating a disabled 70-year-old man. They tied the knot, had a few intimate visits, and then he died, leaving a fortune to Omaima. In 2006, when she first became eligible for parole, she was denied on the grounds that she posed an unpredictable and serious threat to public safety. In 2011, she applied again, but was turned down again because, according to the parole board, she still had not accepted responsibility for the murder. In 2026, she will once again be parole eligible.